There's a rapper from a small town in Alabama called Gadsden, who sold over 500,000 copies of a single album, released 2 platinum singles, signed to Shady Records, toured with Eminem, and collaborated with the likes of Travis Barker and Ed Sheeran. He pioneered an entire subgenre of country rap before it was a trend, and somehow he's never cracked fully into the mainstream. This is the story of Yelawolf and the unlikely rise from the bottom. Yelawolf was born Michael Wayne Atha to a mother who was only 16 years old when she had him. His father was never in the picture, and his mother eventually started dating a sound and lighting technician who worked with touring bands. That relationship inadvertently gave young Michael something most kids from Gadsden don't get: up-close exposure to the music industry. When his family relocated to Antioch, Tennessee, he got pulled into another world entirely that would shape his future: skateboarding. Through skate culture, he discovered hip-hop by hearing artists like Souls of Mischief through skate parts. He was also exposed to southern rap from the kids he was skating with. By his late teens, Yelawolf had moved to Berkeley, California to pursue a skate career. It was here, while he was couch surfing, that he came to the realization that skating wasn't going to work out. This is where he started to believe in his rap aspirations. After that, he went home, and within a few weeks, he got on a Greyhound bus to Seattle because someone promised him $20,000 a month to work as a commercial fisherman.
Somebody like in Anniston, Alabama was like, yo man, you can get $20,000 in 1 month. I was like, $20,000? In 1 month? For what? For fishing? Fuck that shit. I'm going to Seattle. Let's see what's up with this shit. The long of the short is, I got on a Greyhound bus that day and went to the docks and got hired immediately.
Did you guys make 20 grand?
No. It was a piece of shit. It was a piece of shit.
It turns out he was lied to and only made around $1,500, and he ended up homeless on the streets of Seattle. This was the theme in Yelawolf's early life: high risk, low reward, no safety net. Eventually, Yelawolf would move back to Alabama and work some 9-to-5 jobs and hustle. In 2005, he got a shot that most people never even knew about. He appeared on a UPN network reality series called The Road to Stardom that was hosted by Missy Elliott. It was billed as a competition to find the next big star in music. In interviews, Yelawolf has been pretty candid about how that experience went. He felt he was manipulated, and reality TV has a way of doing that, especially to artists who are serious about their crafts and find themselves surrounded by manufactured drama. After that experience, he came home hungry and channeled that energy directly into his first album. In 2005, he recorded Creekwater, an album he produced all by himself on an MPC 2000. While he's talked about not loving that project for his monotone delivery, looking back on it, it really does give you a good insight into Yelawolf's life, his environment that he grew up in, and the type of upbringing he had. There's something that was very raw and real about that album, even if he was still finding himself as an artist. He followed that up with Pissin' in a Barrel of Bees, and by this point, something was starting to crystallize for him artistically. He was figuring out who he was: Alabama trailer park redneck, but street, country roots with hip hop and classic rock at the core. That combination and identity was going to be the thing that separated him from everyone else. Eventually, he would move to Atlanta to pursue his dream further, where he would move in with the late Grip Playaz, who was a local legend in Atlanta. Yelawolf eventually got his chance with a collective called Ghetto Vision and got in front of an executive named Kawan Prather, known in the industry as KP. He performed for him, and in 2006, he signed a deal with Columbia Records through Ghetto Vision. The single off that deal was Kickin', and then nothing really happened. His album Fear and Loathing in Small Town USA never came out. When the legendary Rick Rubin took over as president of Columbia, he cleaned house, and Yelawolf was a victim of the casualties. After making some serious progress, Yelawolf was right back where he had started. He spent this time working on some mixtapes: Ball of Flames, The Ballad of Slick Ricky Bobby, and Stereo, which was a classic rock-themed tape. He also started collaborating with a producer named Malay on a project called Arena Rap, and he started landing notable placements. He sang the hook on Slim Thug's I Run, and he linked up with Joel Santana for Mixing Up the Medicine. Big Boy of Outkast, one of Yelawolf's biggest inspirations, originally wanted him for a rock hook on a track, but Yelawolf turned it down because he didn't want to be typecast as the guy who only sings rock and roll hooks. Big Boy would give him his chance to rap on Your DJ Ain't No DJ, and that record circulated through the industry, and people started paying attention to Yelawolf as a rapper, not just a hook writer. In late 2009, Yelawolf and Willpower recorded what would become the most important project of Yellow's career up to that point, and they recorded this all in a home studio in Alabama. The setup was nothing special, but the music would change Yelawolf's life, and that project was Trunk Music. The first single that came off that project, Pop the Trunk, was unlike anything that was out at that time. It was aggressive, cinematic, southern, and it had an energy that felt lived in. Trunk music spread the way things did before streaming dominated everything, through blogs, message boards, mixtape websites, and performing. At South by Southwest, Yelawolf would get a chance to showcase his performing skills, and he showed out. He made a massive impression on everyone in the room, and one person in particular, an A&R named Todd Parker, became determined to get a deal done with him. The buzz from that weekend was real enough that Jimmy Iovine, the head of Interscope Records, flew Yella out personally to sign him. Shortly after signing to Interscope, he'd signed with Shady Records, Eminem's label, which operated as a subsidiary of Interscope. Yelawolf had often been compared to Eminem early in his career to begin with for obvious reasons, a talented white rapper with a bit of attitude behind his music and persona. This was a big step in Yelawolf's career to expose him to a bigger audience and utilize the resources that a major label can provide. His debut album on the major label was Radioactive, released in 2011. Over the years, Yelawolf's been pretty honest in interviews about his feelings on that record. It was an attempt at radio singles, at hits, and at fitting into what a major label thought the market wanted. Some of it had worked, but a lot of it didn't sound like the Yelawolf that people had fallen for on Trunk music. He was put in the room with a bunch of writers trying to make a hit instead of focusing on that southern, bass-heavy sound that he had cultivated early on in his career. With that being said, there were still some good records that came from Radioactive, and between albums, he stayed creative in ways that were genuinely interesting. He did an EP with Travis Barker, and he did a project with DJ Paul of 3 6 Mafia called Slum Mafia. He also linked up with a young Ed Sheeran, who at that point was known but had not yet become a global phenomenon. To this day, the Slum Done Bridge EP is still not very well known, but honestly it's really great and I think you should check it out if you haven't. Next up would be Trunk Music Returns, and that would pull things back to the sound his core fan base loved. With songs like Catfish Billy, it was returning to that original Trunk music sound. But in 2015 came Love Story, and this is where things shifted artistically in a major way. Love Story was recorded largely in Nashville. Yelawolf brought in fiddle players and country instrumentalists and wove them into hip-hop production. The southern DNA that had always been underneath his music finally got to come to the surface completely. That album would go gold, over 500,000 copies sold. Till It's Gone went platinum. Best Friend featuring Eminem went platinum. By any commercial measure, this was a successful album. By an artistic measure, it was the clearest statement Yelawolf had ever made about his identity. While Yelawolf had started to achieve some major success, some big roadblocks were ahead. Next, he started working on Trial by Fire and he went out on tour. Midway through this tour, things fell apart.
Oh man, I can't do this no more.
There was a blow-up with members of his band, and the tour got canceled. And Yelawolf, by his own account, was in a dark place. He was smoking weed and not drinking, and it was having a severe negative effect on his mental state. He checked out and considered quitting music altogether. For a period of time, he even ended up in a psychiatric facility for 4 days after having a mental breakdown.
So they arrested me and took me to the psych ward. And, I sat up in that motherfucker for 4 days. Scrubs, padded rooms, the whole nine.
Another fun fact worth noting about that tour is that Jelly Roll was one of the openers. This was before he had blown up to superstardom, and when Yelawolf canceled the remaining dates, Jelly Roll was among those who were affected. For a short time, they would have a falling out, but later they would patch things up. Yelawolf went to a rehab for 30 days to put himself back together enough to release the record. He eventually relabeled the tour the 5150 Tour, a reference to his psychiatric hold, and made up the canceled dates. Trial by Fire came out, and it is, without question, one of the most important albums in country rap history. In today's hip-hop scene, country rap has become a lot more trendy, and you even see country artists or mainstream artists like Morgan Wallen trying to cross over. But this really laid the foundation. Though Yelawolf wasn't the first ever rapper from the South to have a country twang to it, this felt like an album that really bridged the gap. Following Trial by Fire would be Trunk Music 3, and that would close out the Shady era. He'd fulfilled his contract, and rather than re-sign, Yelawolf decided to go independent under his own Slamerican label. The first independent release was Ghetto Cowboy, and this included some of the most beloved records from fans, like You and Me. What followed was a run of collaborative projects that showed the breadth of who Yella is as an artist. Yelawolf Black Sheep with Kasky, Turquoise Tornado with Riff Raff, Mile Zero with DJ Muggs, This just shows the versatility just by naming those 4 different rappers, the different styles that Yelawolf is capable of. In 2021, he released Mudmouth, fully produced by longtime collaborator Jim Johnson, the man who actually produced his first single, Kickin'. Then he turned his attention to something he clearly had his mind on for a while, a full rock and roll album. Sometimes Why, made with Shooter Jennings, was that project. Yella seemed to believe, or at least hope, that it would be a new chapter for him commercially and vault him into stardom. It didn't, and the legs just weren't there. Whether that's an audience discovery problem, a genre-crossing challenge, or just timing, it's hard to say. As an artistic piece of work, it is worth hearing though. After Sometimes Why, Yelawolf would return to his roots again and bring us a double album strictly hip-hop called War Story. It's one of the strongest he's put out in years, hip-hop wise in my opinion, and the production split is meaningful, half produced by Malay and the other half by Willpower, the 2 producers who were with him at the very beginning of his story. This was a true return to form for Yelawolf. These days, Yelawolf plays golf in his free time, he keeps releasing music, he tours relentlessly, has his own whiskey company. He's built Slamerican into a legitimate independent brand, and he has a loyal fan base that's stuck with him through every turn of his career. Yelawolf is an artist who has always done things on his own terms. He's pioneered sounds like southern hip-hop with genuine country instrumentation that became commercially massive once other artists picked it up. He had platinum records on a major label. He went independent. He's documented all his ups and downs rather than hiding them. And he never became a star in the way that his talent warranted. Maybe that'll change for Yelawolf, maybe it won't. Either way, the music still exists, and he has an undeniable discography, a loyal fan base, and he's inspired a lot of people's favorite artists without them even knowing. Maybe it's best for Yelawolf to stay in that underdog role, what he's always been his whole life. All I know is he's one of the most genuine artists that's been putting in decades of work, and he deserves all the success that he gets. I'm Rarri Talks Rap, thanks for watching. Peace!